Well, let's tell the people who don't know you and haven't heard us on social media who you are. What's your story?
Well, I'm Beatriz, the mom of Hugo Alejandro and Julian. Hugo Alejandro is my first son, and he was murdered at 19 when we thought we were a normal family and that nothing bad would happen to us in life. Just dealing with the usual dangers of a family. And just like that, one day, Alejandro left for his university. I said goodbye to him as always with his blessing, and he didn't come back. At 3 a.m., they notified us. I was really anxious the whole time because he wasn't the kind of person who would take long, or if he did, he would let us know. But he didn't come back. He didn't come back, and time kept passing, and we didn't know anything. I was very confident in the Virgin. I've always been a lover of hers. At 2 a.m., at 12 p.m., I said, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to sleep. And it turns out I fell asleep, which is strange because when they're out, I can't sleep, like any worried mom about her kids. And somehow, I ended up falling asleep. I don't understand why. At 3 a.m., the phone rings, and I tell him to answer it because it's a bad call. Exactly. It was the doctor from Malgrania Hospital saying that Hugo Alejandro was very badly injured with gunshot wounds to the face, and that there was nothing they could do. Where do we send him? The doctor says, and my husband says, to send him to San Ignacio, which is where all the insurances and where Hugo Alejandro studied, at Javeriana, the Javeriana Hospital. And I didn't think it would be that terrible. I saw that there were bullets, but I imagined bullets in the face, my husband said. So, all I said was, let's sell the apartment. We'll do whatever we can, and we'll do his plastic surgery. We'll do something for him. But I never imagined he would die on me. I never thought that would happen. However, I managed to get dressed and put the little figure of the divine child in my pocket for company, and we headed to the hospital. When we got there, the head of the emergency department said, "Are you Hugo Alejandro's mom?" I said yes, and she told me to follow her because there was nothing that could be done. He could die at any moment during the day. Well, I think at that moment, I went into shock because I was really just doing things like a robot. And we arrived on the surgery floor because he was taken into surgery, and the doctor, the neurologist, came out and said, no, there's nothing we can do. His head is shattered all over from the bullet fragments, and he could die at any moment. Well, what I did was step out and run to find my friends. I called them and said, please, Hugo, Alejandro is dying, and I need you guys. And that was the beginning of it all, a nightmare of my life.
My brother was in a coma in the hospital for 13 days. Practically brain dead. And finally, he passed away. What happened after that? I remember the moment clearly when we were having lunch at my grandma's and we got the call. They told me he had gotten worse, as if he could get any worse, and then he finally passed away. What happens from the moment I arrived in that hospital room when my brother was already dead?
When I got to that room, the only thing I could do was grab his feet because the bed was full of his friends and family, and I didn't have any space left. So what did I do? I took his little foot and gave a kiss on his big toe. And, well, not even looking at him. And well, he was in bad shape because he had septicemia from the bullets. So he was like dizzy, he was in bad shape. And in that moment, you picked up the guitar and started to sing. And there I said to myself until I got here, this isn't for me, I can't take it anymore. And I walked out. That was the last I saw of Hugo Alejandro, of his body, because I still see his soul. I still feel his soul, and he continues to be with me always. And in that moment when I walked out, I ran into my dad's best friend who had lost his daughter 7 years ago. And I asked him, Ascanio, when is this pain going to go away? It was already a pain. Without a name, it was a giant pain. But really in those moments, I think the adrenaline, the body kind of dulls, like it puts up a screen, you can act and do things and be fully aware. And he tells me his answer was never. And when he tells me never, I said to myself, well, if it's never, I'm going to die. Or they're going to take me to a mental hospital. Or I don't know what's going to happen to me. But this is something that you just can't. You can't bear. And I was worried about my dad, because I was more concerned about him, thinking now he's going to die too. And he was with his hunter. He was testing his whole heart because he had his heart condition. And he loved Gualejandro immensely. So for him, I knew it was really hard, you know? And I also thought that if he saw me calm, he would be calm too. So what I did was go and make him a soothing herbal tea and sit with him quietly to help calm him down. And I also thought that if he saw me calm, he would be calm. So what I did was go and make him a soothing herbal tea and sit with him quietly to help calm him down. So, did you all leave with Hugo Alejandro? Yeah. And Hugo told me you go with everyone to your parents' house. And he went to the medical examiner's office to do the autopsy. And I went with all the family and friends to my dad's house. When I got to my dad's house, I had a moment of desperation, because that's when I started to see the huge scale of what was happening. I always used to watch when Hugo Alejandro would go out to concerts there at the Camp Inn right across, and I would wait for him by the window, and I would see him coming, you know, down that little path. And I stand by that window, and I remember that moment when I would see him coming back home. And at that moment, I couldn't hold it in. I let out a scream, a huge scream. No. But fortunately, I was surrounded by all my friends and family who hugged me. They didn't know what to do to comfort me. And that calmed me down a lot, because the hugs from friends are really important in that moment, and even more so from family. My parents were right there. Poor things, trying to hold back, so they wouldn't stress me out too much. But definitely those tough moments are calmed by friends and family.
In 2001, when my grandfather's friend told you this is never going to happen, and he said it because he knew what he was talking about, he had also lost a child some time ago. This is going to be forever. How do you turn around that perspective when someone with authority is saying at that moment, this never goes away? How does one look for a different possibility?
It is definitely working. It is. Crying. It is. Expressing. It is sharing what has happened. Fortunately, I am one of those people who tells everything that happens to me, and on that occasion, I told the story 1,000 times. So much so that people thought I was going crazy, because I was repeating the same thing, but that was an infinite relief for me. When I talked about that, it felt like things calmed down, the pain eased a bit. So definitely, my experience was about making immediate decisions. I cleaned up his room 8 days later. A few days later, I watched his videos. When you all went to your studio and to work, I was left alone. I made all those immediate decisions with the dread of what was going to happen to me, of what I was going to feel, but with the determination to see him and the desire to see him again, moving and singing, because it was a beautiful video where he sang out of First Communion with the Handel Choir. And he looked perfect with his hair, his eyes, singing. It was just beautiful. So, of course, that hurt me immensely. And I was crying and banging my head against the walls and screaming. But that was a huge release. So, expressing yourself without fear is really important. You definitely have to work on it, and as soon as possible.
Can you recount those decisions? Like, what was the first big decision you made? I don't know if you remember what that was, and then what were the more complex ones that helped you in your process?
The first decision was to go back to the apartment because I spent 8 days at my parents' house trying to avoid facing things. And there, in my mother's house, with all the love and care and pampering, I still had to confront the situation. So I told Hugo, returning home, opening the door, loneliness hit hard, facing pain, and life again was tough because life handles everything. You're born, you die. But I never thought death would come so soon. I thought I'd die, not him, but life decides. Entering the apartment, his music cassette suitcase was gone. His room closed. I didn't enter, didn't want to cry. I welcomed friends and took calls from dear ones. But that's not how it is. It's not what one wants, but life takes care of that. And when I entered the apartment, they had already put away the suitcase, and his room was closed. So I didn't go in. I had to welcome the friends who came to visit. Hugo went to work, and you went to school, and I was left alone. I went into his room, and that was an incredibly difficult moment. If Gualajandro isn't here, why do I care about all this stuff? And well, as I was getting back to reality, shortly after, Hugo went to work, and you went to school, and I was left alone. So I thought, I have to go into that room. I have to do it, and I have to do it by myself. I took advantage of being alone and went into his room where his pajamas were, still intact, smelling like him. His things were there, and that was an incredibly difficult moment, really hard to face. But I did it maybe out of a lot of anger because I thought, if Gualajandro isn't here, why do I care about all this stuff? What I need is to have him here. What do I care? What I need is to have him here. What do I care? As for his clothes, yes, they were very dear and beautiful because they were his clothes. And I loved his clothes too, but I loved Gualajandro more. So what I wanted was to have him here. So that helped me. Fortunately, that anger helped me because it pushed me to take out all his things, to move the mattress. And I said, this room is no longer his. He's not here for this, for anything. It needs to change. They set up a studio there. It became a studio. And that first decision was really important because I got out of that with all the pain and everything, but I got out of it. So those little things are really important to do quickly. That way of expressing yourself, of crying whatever you need to cry about in front of whoever at any time so that no one makes you feel uncomfortable for crying. I didn't care about crying wherever I was and facing a lot of things. Going out of the apartment to see all the places he used to go, those streets, where he would take me, holding me tight, to catch the bus when he was heading to his university and I was going to my job. That was also facing a very tough moment because what a huge loneliness it was, even though I had the whole world around me, even though everyone was paying attention, but the absence of them creates an infinite loneliness. So all of that has to be processed. You have to go through all those stages as quickly as possible. You have to keep moving, not just sit still. At the beginning, sure, in the first few days, I didn't want to do anything, but life goes on. I saw through that window that everyone was going to work, that the children were shouting, playing, listening to music, and I said, but what if Hugo Alejandro died? What's up? with the fact that life doesn't care, that people don't care. So you have to overcome all those things. You have to see that life goes on, that you have to work, that you have to make decisions, that you have to receive hugs from your family, that you have to carry on. I had to deal with a birthday really soon, then Christmas and New Year's right after. So, everything happened at once. Thank God, because it helped me get through all those stages really quickly.
Today, with the perspective of years, you feel like you would have done anything differently.
No, I don't think so. I believe what I did was right, maybe for companionship, like with Alejandro, or perhaps it was God's guidance. The Holy Spirit guided me, and I did it well. I recommend mothers put an effort to transform pain into something positive. Life must continue in the best way. When did you start to feel you were climbing out of that dark hole? And I definitely recommend to all mothers that you have to put in all the effort, even when you don't want to move forward, to get that pain out and be able to transform it into something positive and something great for life. Because it has to continue in the best way possible, since you're starting from scratch.
When did you start to feel that? You were beginning to climb out of that dark hole you were in.
When I started crying less, when a day would go by and I wouldn't cry, I would think, why am I not crying? Why does it hurt so much? Was it that I didn't love Gualajandro as much as I thought? I questioned myself, why? I felt crazy and didn't understand why. Over time, I saw other mothers who take longer, not putting away clothes, leaving them, as if their loved one were still there. I realized this pain will pass, but you must face it. It depends on each person, their personality, habits, and factors influencing the grieving process. Looking at what I did, I can tell them, this pain will pass, but you must work through it. It depends on personality, habits, and other factors. For me, Hugo Alejandro died in November, and I felt different by February. That depends on each person, their personality, their habits, and so many things that influence whether the grief passes quickly or not. But Hugo Alejandro died in November, and by February, I was already feeling different. In January, I called my boss, the dentist. I was living in Bogota at the time, and I called my boss in Cali and said, I need to work. I need to keep myself busy because I can't be locked up in four walls crying. It's going to drive me crazy. So he told me to come over and he'd give me the job. And that was really another very important decision, because even though it was just 2 months, I left them alone, packed my bag, took my Virgin Mary statue and the photo of Alejandro, and I left. I came to Cali by myself, to my compadre's house, who welcomed me and cried with me just the same. So that was a really important decision, to start working, because even though I was working, I kept crying between patients, telling my story to my assistants. So all of that helped my grieving process go by pretty quickly.
How do you see those days now with the perspective of years?
What about? How do you see that time of Hugo Alejandro's death? Everything you've told us over the years, it's a memory. That's not very pleasant, but has brought great things to my life. It has completely changed my life. That image I carry in my heart of Gualajandro is a daily guide for me, and it drives me when I have tough moments, because you have sweet moments and tough moments in life. And sometimes you wake up feeling lazy. What do? Alejandro is the one who moves me. I see that red breast and I immediately move to find what I have to do what I have to do, and I move to function. But I wouldn't wish that pain on anyone, not even my worst enemy, not even the one who killed my son. So, if you know how to handle the situation, if you know how to rise above that pain, it's infinitely positive and beautiful because Hugo Alejandro keeps smiling. I remember him, and right away I see his smile. And that was what motivated me to move forward, his laughter. Because I always said, Hugo Alejandro, what are you thinking I should do? I get really upset, right? Because he would be telling me, no, Mom, what is that? Yisn't. Alejandro would be calling me Mom, but I am Luz. But I am Hugo, the happy man. And he continues to be happy. On the other side. So all those things moved me. They could be like little band-aids, like incentives I gave myself. But really, that's what drives me to keep living fully, to live with values, and to try not to make mistakes. I have. To learn until the very last moment, because definitely, Hugo, Alejandro became my teacher, and I have to reach him with my head held high, telling him, I did it, I didn't. Let myself be destroyed, and I'm still the strong mom you knew. 2001. Tell us the story of the robin. That robin is a beautiful part of our lives as it began, with a lovely story with Hugo, and we never imagined it could be some kind of message from Hugo Alejandro. We didn't think about it. We didn't think that a little bird could mean beautiful messages and be present in our lives. And when Hugo tells me the story, what happened, I said, how strange. We didn't think about it, since we hadn't lost a child or anyone who hurt us that much. We didn't think that a little bird could mean such beautiful messages and be so present in our lives, but then connecting the dots. And when Hugo tells me the story, what happened, I would say, but how strange, because it could have been any other bird but a robin, which are the colors that Alejandro chose for his room. His whole room was in red and black. And when Hugo tells me the story, what happened, I would say, but how strange, because it could have been any other bird but a redbreast, which are the colors that Alexander chose for his room. Yuzin's entire room was red and black. If I said a representation of Diego Alejandro here, it could be the robin. We connected dots, realizing whenever the bird appeared, it meant something important, reminding us to act. The bird motivated us to act for others' good. We understood from the start that pain could be transcended through love and service. So that little bird motivated us to do things. It was like messages for the good of others in service to others. From the very beginning, we started to understand that this pain could be transcended through love and service. That's why that little bird has meant so much. From the very beginning, we started to understand that this pain could be transcended through love and service. So that's why that little bird has meant so much. And in the tough moments, when I'm sometimes feeling down, suddenly the bird shows up. And it's not that Hugo Alejandro is the bird. It's that he represents him physically. So when I see that bird, I immediately think of Hugo Alejandro because he's always on my mind. It's not in their activities, and Hugo Alejandro isn't here, just like you're not here, like we are in what we're doing. But that little bird brings us back together with Hugo Alejandro. So it has meant a lot in our lives and in many couples who have had beautiful experiences, not just with the robin, but with butterflies, hummingbirds, and rainbows. These are beautiful things that connect us to them. How do you see all of this that we're involved in today with the 15 burdens of Ioner? That's a huge blessing. That's the work that Hugo Alejandro left us, to serve, because he was all about service. Gualejandro was love and service, definitely. That's why he left so quickly. He was ready to ascend, and this work has been so profound, so effective. It's a sense of peace that you feel when you see a mother, not just from Colombia, but from many places. Thank God we've been able to reach many parts of the world to help ease that immense pain that I once felt, and to assure all those mothers that this pain does pass, and it passes in a good way. It transforms you into another person and makes you a better person in honor of them.
What would you answer today to a mother who asks you the same thing that you asked my grandfather's friend back then? When will this pain pass?
Oh, without a doubt, I would give her a hug, because hugs are healing, and I would tell her I felt that too, and I know what you're feeling. I'm so sure that you're going to work through this, and that you'll heal from this pain very soon, and that the death of this little one is going to be a complete life change for your good and for the good of all humanity, because everything we do, the cosmos distributes it and it reaches many people. So that's what I really liked when I would go to a mother who was at her child's wake, and I could tell her, I know what you're feeling. You could see it in the mother's eyes saying, I'm not the only one in the world. There are others who have gone through the same thing. The mother's eyes showed she wasn't alone. Others have experienced this. Telling a mother, if you work through this and decide, you'll emerge stronger. You could see it in the mother's eyes saying, I'm not the only one in the world. There are others who have gone through the same thing. So, being able to tell a mother, you can be sure that if you work through this, if you make decisions, you will come out of this pain even stronger.